Harold Evans to discuss his spirited new book, My Paper Chase, The True Story of Vanished Times. Sir Harry knows everything and everyone in the publishing world. He's the editor-at-large of the week. He was the editor of the Sunday Times for 14 years, and he became the editor of the Times. Sir Harry is also founding editor of Condé Nast Traveler, and president of Random House for 7 years. He has penned books on journalism and history, including the New York Times bestseller, The Century, which we've sold tons of copies here. And where he finds the time to be an expert ping pong player, or as he likes to say, table tennis player, I just don't know. My Paper Chase has been gathering rave reviews. The Economist wrote that Sir Harold Evans remains one of the great figures of modern journalism. His autobiography is both gripping and timely. And he was just interviewed on the Colbert Report, which I watched, where Sir Harry outwitted Stephen Colbert. So for a little bit of tonight's format, following the reading, Sir Harry will open up the mic for your questions. We just asked, we have a roving mic, if you don't mind talking into it so everybody can hear your question. And then he's going to stick around and autograph copies for you, which you can purchase downstairs on your way out of the store when you're done shopping. So please, everyone, welcome my friend, the legendary journalist, best-selling author, award-winning table tennis player, and overall great guy, Sir Harry Evans, to the Strand. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I've got an apology tonight. Get the apologies over with. This man here cannot be with us. Unfortunately, he was last seen about 10 years ago. But at least I can stand in for him because I bear some resemblance. Thank you, Nancy, for that. What I thought I might do, it's an autobiography, so basically it starts with me almost dying at the age of 2, and it described the 2 women who saved me, nursing, because my mother was coping with another sick brother, and my father was driving trains at night, munition trains, later on. And as I say here, many people feel the 2 women who nursed me back to health have a lot to answer for. But I'd like to start by just doing some reading and then link the little reading bits to the narrative of a life in newspapers and growing up as a working class. I mean, failing to get to high school, leaving school at 15. My father left school at 11. My mother left school at 12, and she wore wooden clogs to go to the cotton mill. And my father was underneath a huge train cleaning the big ends and hoping nobody moved the train, which some lunatic occasionally did. So that was my mother and my father and my brothers. Can I open this thing here without knocking the microphone over? So it begins, basically, this is how it begins. The most exciting sound in the world for me as a boy was the slow whoosh, whoosh, whoosh of the big steam engine leaving Manchester Exchange Station for Rhyl in North Wales. Every year as summer neared, I counted the days to when the whole family, 6 of us then, would escape the bleakness of northern winters, taking the train for a week at the seaside, buckets and spades in hand. I was nearly 12 the summer I saw the bodies of the soldiers scattered about the sands. The soldiers were so still, their clothing so torn, their faces so pale, they looked as if they'd died where they fell. And yet they'd escaped death, unlike thousands of their comrades left on the battlegrounds of northern France, thousands more on the way to years in German internment camps. The men I saw as a boy of 12 were the lucky ones, a few hundred of the 200,000 of the British Expeditionary Force who just days before, in May-June, had fought their way to Dunkirk. 24 hours before, they had been on that other beach, hammered from the air by Stuka dive bombers, strafed by the machine guns of Messerschmitts, rescue ships ablaze offshore, and every hour the German panzers closing the ring. They were a very forlorn group, unshaven, some in remnants of uniforms, some in makeshift outfits of pyjamas and sweaters, not a hat between them, lying apart from the rows of deck chairs and the Punch and Judy show and the pier and the ice cream stands. Well, that was a real amazing scene. My father was fantastically gregarious. He drove me crazy. They'd never met another person he didn't want to talk to and ask them about their lives. I wanted to get on with building sandcastles at the age of 12. That seemed to me to be the important thing. But he walked up to these men and squatted. He was 39, gave them a cigarette and started talking to them. Of course, I realized later that he was doing what a good reporter does: ask questions and listen and make a note of it. When we got back to the boarding house for lunch, none of the families had heard about Dunkirk. My father started to tell them. He told them what the men had said to him, which was they were totally demoralized. They complained about having World War weapons to fight with, and they were ashamed of having retreated. And they were actually angry, but certainly not the picture that was pinned up on the boarding house wall. Our troops, bloody marvellous, we can't wait to get back. Which was a huge fiction. And I pondered about it, even as a boy of 12, and I wondered about it ever since. Was it right to misrepresent, or did we just see a fragment? Was it necessary for the national morale to misrepresent what had happened? In fact, Winston Churchill said later he got very worried about the representation of that defeat as though it were a victory. He said, wars are not won by evacuations. But it made me think. I began to think. I loved newspapers already. I mean, I was reading the comics and the sports pages, and I wasn't really following, as you might expect. I was only a kid. I wasn't following what was happening in Germany with the Nazis and the anti-Semitism. But the epiphany, which is what it was, the epiphany on Real Beat shook my faith in the printed word. But it didn't make me averse to newspapers. On the contrary, as I entered my teens, I grew ever more eager to involve myself in their mysteries. Newspapers were clearly more important and more fascinating than I'd imagined, reporting more than a matter of stenography. But how was I to become a reporter? How was I to learn the newspaper trade? I was a working-class boy who had already been branded a failure, having failed to qualify for grammar school, the English equivalent, roughly, of American high school. Was I reaching too far? Was I really fit for the work? What were the pitfalls, the ethical dilemmas, and the traps I could barely imagine? How could I equip myself to decode the complex, ever-changing, thrilling, dynamic mosaic of live news and bring it to the public with the raw integrity of truth? So began my paper chase. Now, I must tell you, I was so proud of my father, even though I was so cross with him. I was ashamed. I'd travel on a railway train with him. He'd say to the next man, "Where are you from then?" I said, Dad, God, don't, please don't. And I was so embarrassed by him, but I must say I was also proud of him. Because to drive a steam train meant coming through 20, 30, 40 years of apprenticeship, dirty, dangerous job. And I never saw him at work until one day when I was 16 and I was working in Manchester. I got off the train and there was my father on the opposite side taking a train. People weren't allowed on the footplate, which is the open cab, which is the front of the train. Most of you here probably don't remember steam trains. So he said, "Hop on quick." So I hopped on. This is what I wrote. "Sitting in the comfort of a railway carriage, as I had been on the way in, gave passengers no idea of the ferocious goings-on up in front on the open footplate as the train gathered speed out of the station and up the line, of the heat and noise that made speech impossible, the roar and flames of the firebox, the sweat of the